15 seconds after facing harassment, this woman made an incredible move. You'll be heartwarmed. Sarah had just finished a long day of baking. The sweet aroma of cinnamon and vanilla lingered in sweet resilience. Her little bakery tucked away in a bustling Chicago neighborhood. But that warm feeling evaporated as dark clouds rolled in. The storm captured her spirit when she dashed out of the elementary school, clutching her kids' colorful drawings while rain drizzled down her back. She was late again. In a heartbeat, panic swept over her. She felt the shadows behind her, rowdy strangers loitering under an awning, and she quickened her pace. A sudden shout pierced the air like a knife. "Hey lady, what's so sweet about you?" The laughter of the group echoed, bone-chilling. In 15 seconds Sarah's heart raced. Hurtful words were thrown as if she were nothing but a target. But instead of collapsing into silence, something shifted inside her. No more fear, she thought. She remembered the countless stories shared in her bakery. Customers openly pouring out their struggles, seeking kindness in a world that felt harsh. Clenching her fists, she decided to transform her distress into determination. She would take a stand not just for herself but for her neighborhood. They needed hope. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sarah threw herself into plans for a community outreach program, a safe space for respect, support, and empowerment. But the road ahead was rocky. Many neighbors were wrapped up in their own battles, and skepticism clouded her mission. She faced whispers of doubt, particularly from her protective mother. "This city is dangerous, Sarah. You could get hurt." Their conversations flared like summer storms, loud and heated. Her mother didn't understand the passion burning in her heart. As sessions came and went, Sarah fought weariness. Moments of doubt pressed down on her like heavy rain. Was unlocking the door of connection too much to ask? Just when she felt the weight of those worries, a chance encounter shifted her gears. A wise old veteran sharing his tales of hardships, his grit a mirror reflecting her own. That familiar fire ignited anew. She reached out to teachers, activists, and artists. She felt the momentum, but then came a disaster. Sarah's first community meeting yielded barely a handful of attendees. Disheartened, she fought back tears, convinced she had asked the impossible. Yet in that moment, unexpected allies emerged. The local church group, parents from her kids' school, and even some who had once watched her with scorn showed up. They shared laughter and tears, stories intertwining like dough in her hands. Rising from vulnerability transformed Sarah into a beacon for the forgotten. Just as hope blossomed, the shadows returned. An anonymous letter warned her to back down. A chill of fear wrapped itself around her heart. But deep down, she knew she had stepped into something greater than herself. Was she ready to confront the fight ahead? Or would fear drown her dreams for her community? She stood poised on the edge of danger, feeling the weight of the world but also the promise of healing. The rain thundered like an angry crowd as Sarah stared down the blank page before her. She had spent hours outlining meeting agendas for the month, but now all she could do was run her fingers through her hair, desperate for clarity. The anonymous letter still lay on the kitchen counter, the harsh words glaring back at her. "Stay out of it. You don't belong here." She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the scent of cinnamon lingering in the air from yesterday's batch of muffins. It was a reminder of the sweetness she offered her community. As she rolled up a sleeve and began to write again, her mind buzzed with thoughts of those faces, hopeful and kind, gathered around her in that first meeting, but those fragile memories were choked by doubt. Maybe her mother was right. The streets were dangerous. Maybe this venture was foolish. Yet frustration surfaced. She yearned for connection, for the joy of community over fear. Then, just as despair threatened to pull her down, her phone buzzed with a message. It was a group chat from the church community she had reached out to weeks ago. They organized a pop-up dinner for the neighborhood, and a flurry of messages spiraled into action. "We can do this together," chipped in Jenna, a vibrant mother who had also faced her share of struggle. "We should serve food and share stories too." A spark ignited within Sarah. Yes, Let us invite everyone, she typed back, her heart racing with excitement. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about creating a safe haven where everyone's voice mattered, where kindness ricocheted off walls bruised by indifference as plans solidified. Sarah found herself enveloped in a wave of support. The neighborhood echoed with music and laughter as volunteers rallied to cook, set up tables and hang colorful lights. All at once, she felt a flicker of that same determination that had urged her forward. The night of the dinner arrived, and she stood at the entrance, her heart thumping with a mix of hope and fear. A small crowd gathered, slowly growing as more families arrived. Parents nudged their kids forward, and soon it felt like a vibrant tapestry of connection was weaving before her eyes. As she welcomed them in, their smiles warmed her from within. But shadows still lingered at the edges. Moments before the festivities began, she caught sight of a figure lingering in the distance. One of the rowdy strangers from that day on the street, watching with narrowed eyes. Her heart dropped. Was this person here to ruin everything? Sarah, Jenna called, breaking her trance. Are you ready? We need you. She steeled herself and turned back to the crowd, forcing a smile, determined to drive fear away with laughter and stories. This was about more than one person, it was about healing for all. When she shared her own story of overcoming fear, her voice shook with vulnerability. Yet the warmth radiating from those listening brightened her spirit. Then at the very peak of her story, someone shouted from the back, "You're not alone. We're with you." A wave of yes, and keep going, surged through the crowd, amplifying her strength. But then the figure in the shadows stepped closer, stealing a breath from the joyous night. What was he going to do? Would he sabotage her efforts, or was there another reason for his presence? For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt her heart racing. Not with fear but with fierce resolve. The figure moved closer, and Sarah's heart raced as she tried to keep her voice steady. The laughter and chatter around her felt miles away, swallowed by the rising tension. Jenna, sensing her apprehension, nudged her gently, whispering a supportive "You've got this." As the man stepped into the flickering light of the string bulbs, Sarah recognized him, a local, often talked about but seldom seen in a positive light. His worn face bore the marks of hardship, but there was a flicker of something else there too. Maybe vulnerability or even curiosity. "Excuse me," he called, his voice cutting through the din. The crowd stopped and eyes turned, uncertainty weaving through the air. Sarah felt as if time stood still. This was the moment. "Is this what you started?" He gestured to the gathering around them. "A dinner for everyone to come together?" Sarah nodded slowly, unsure of where this was headed. "Yes, it is." Her voice rang louder now, fueled by the spirit of her mission. "It's about sharing food and stories. It's about community." He stepped closer still, the fear in Sarah's chest tight but manageable. "Why would you want me here?" His question hung heavy in the quiet air. "Because everyone matters," she replied, feeling the truth of her words surge through her. "Your story, your presence, it matters just as much as anyone else's." A murmur of agreement floated from the crowd, echoing her sentiment that seemed to strike a chord. The man's shoulders relaxed just a fraction, and he hesitated. "The streets, they're rough. You don't understand." Sarah took a step forward, a spark of empathy igniting in her heart. "Then tell us about it. Share your story with us tonight." His brow furrowed, doubt still clouding his eyes, but for the first time, he seemed to consider her words. "Why, what's in it for me?" "Connection," she said, her pulse steadying with resolution. "You're not alone anymore. We're all here to listen and to support one another." The crowd began to buzz again. A ripple of encouragement, whispers of "yes, share," and "we're here for you," filled the air. A mix of compassion and understanding. He looked around, searching faces full of hope and acceptance. As the first notes of music began to play softly in the background, he stepped back, still hesitant but less rigid. Maybe he wasn't there to disrupt. Maybe he was searching for belonging. "All right," he finally said, his voice softer. "I guess I can give it a shot." A wave of collective relief washed over the crowd. Sarah's heart soared as she felt the spirit of connection taking root right there. This was what she had envisioned, a space where walls crumbled and hearts opened. As he stepped into the circle of light, ready to share his truth, Sarah realized something profound. Each fear she faced had opened a door to something greater, a bridge to deeper understanding. But just as the man began to speak, a sudden shout pierced the tender atmosphere, cutting through the warmth of the moment. Sarah's heart sank as she turned toward the source of the noise. Who was interrupting their fragile peace? What more could challenge the connection they had just begun to weave? The night had already promised so much, but it was clear that its trials were far from over. The shout echoed like a thunderclap, a jagged disruption that shattered the moment. Sarah's stomach twisted, fear spreading through her like ice. Her eyes darted to a group at the back of the gathering. Some drunk patrons, their raucous laughter quickly turning into jeers, pointing and making hurtful comments. "Get out of here. You don't belong," one of them yelled, his voice laced with disdain. The crowd shifted, an uneasy ripple running through the gathering. The man, once ready to share his story, faltered, retreating slightly back into the shadows. Sarah felt the entire atmosphere grow heavy and tense, as if the air had thickened with the weight of unkindness. "No," she shouted, surprising herself with the strength of her voice. "This is our space. We've all come together. Everyone deserves to be here." Her words hung in the air, almost daring the negativity to dissolve. A few voices from the crowd joined hers, pushing back against the taunts. "Leave him alone. He's here to share," someone called out. With each shout of support, Sarah's heart swelled. She turned back to the man who was watching, uncertainty etched in his features. "It's okay. You can do this. We're here with you," she urged him, her voice softer now, filled with encouragement. The shouts at the back grew more desperate, yet it was almost as if their discordant cries were met with increasing unity from the crowd. More people stepped forward, forming a barrier between the man and the source of the hostility. "Stand together," Jenna called, raising her hands, leading the way with fierce solidarity. Soon she squeezed Sarah's arm as reassurance passed between them. "We're strong when we're connected." The man's eyes flickered across the faces of the crowd. For every angry shout, there were 10 voices in support. Inch by inch he stepped back into the light. Sarah could see the fight in his eyes, a struggle between fear and the hope of belonging. "Tell us your story," she coaxed, warmth enveloping her as she took a small step toward him. "Please." The music faded into the background, replaced by the heartbeat of anticipation. The crowd fell silent, each face eager to listen. Taking a deep breath, he began, his voice trembling but gaining strength as he spoke. "I grew up on these streets alone. I've seen things." His gaze shifted, haunted memories coming to life. "But I've also found pieces of kindness. I want to share that part." Another jeer erupted from the back, but the crowd held firm. They wouldn't let the negativity drown out a voice that longed to be heard. As the man's story unfolded, vulnerability gave rise to courage. The crowd leaned in, slices of shared humanity illuminating the night. People shared glances of understanding, some with tears glistening in their eyes as stories of hardship and resilience intertwined. Just then, out of nowhere, sirens blared in the distance, reverberating ominously through the night air. The momentary distraction shattered the intimate connection they had built. Sarah's heart raced. What would happen next? Would the atmosphere shift again? Or had they truly laid the groundwork for something meaningful? The stakes had risen, and not everything felt secure. What could they do now in the face of adversity that seemed relentless? Would they stand strong, or let fear take hold once more? The blaring of sirens cut through the air like a knife. It was a stark reminder of reality. They were still very much in the middle of an unpredictable night. Sarah glanced anxiously at the group of angry patrons, their laughter and jeers suddenly overshadowed by the rising tension. Would this end their moment of unity? The man, whose story had just begun to weave a fragile connection, hesitated. For a split second, fear flashed in his eyes. The crowd's resolve, however, ignited a spark within him. He straightened his back, drawing in a shaky breath, as if to reclaim the power of his voice. "No more fear," someone shouted. The call blazed through the crowd, emboldening hearts that were already tentatively linking together. The sirens grew louder, but Sarah felt the shift. She could see people strategizing, planning, fighting not just for the man but for themselves. It was as if everyone understood that they had a stake in this. Sarah turned and caught glimpses of determination on their faces. Jenna's, a gentle fury-filled glare. A young girl with braided hair, gripping her mother's hand, eyes wide but steady. We will not be silenced, Sarah declared. And the crowd echoed her sentiment in a chorus of affirmations. I'm not done. The man took a half step forward, spurred by their encouragement. I want to tell you what kindness looks like, what it means to reach out to one another, even when painted with walls. His words rang through the crowd, captivating as he spoke of quiet moments, small acts that held monumental weight. He recalled a woman who had once offered him a meal, her kindness cutting through the bitter cold of isolation. The air thickened with shared breaths and compassion, the darkness retreating as light spilled forth from their collective humanity. But just as the crowd began to move seamlessly with his storytelling, the distant threat loomed large as the sirens drew nearer. Faces turned in uncertainty. The shadow of anxiety fell heavier with each passing second. What would the arrival of the police mean? Would their unity be disrupted by a different kind of fear? Stay together, Jenna urged again, taking Sarah's hand, a silent promise of solidarity. The group, now a tangled but strong web of joined hands and fierce hearts, transitioned from reactive fear to proactive courage. It was in this pivotal moment that Sarah felt alive and connected like never before. We stand together, Sarah shouted, emboldened. This space is for everyone. We won't let fear intimidate us, or drown out voices that should be heard. A collective roar erupted, a defiant proclamation that echoed up into the night sky. As the strumming of guitars faded and the vibrant stories danced in the cool breeze, everything felt electric, charged with possibility. Then through the chaos, someone stepped forward, an officer in uniform, face hardened but eyes searching. Sarah felt the sudden rush of dread grip her heart. Were they coming to protect or to silence? Is everything all right here? The officer called, cutting through the cacophony. In that moment, Sarah's mind raced. Should she speak up or let the man continue? Would her words defuse the tension or ignite it further? The choice felt monumental, thick and heavy, but before she could decide, the man beside her took a deep breath. I have something to share, he said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling around them. Would his next words change the course of what was about to unfold? Would they bridge the divide or draw them deeper into conflict? A hush fell over the crowd as anticipation hung in the air, leaving them all breathless and wondering what would come next. The silence settled over the crowd like a thick fog, wrapping everyone in a moment of collective breath. Sarah's heart pounded against her chest as she braced herself for the man's next words. Everyone's eyes were locked on him, searching for hope, a sign that what they stood for wouldn't be crushed by an outside force. I've been treated like I don't belong, he started, voice trembling slightly. But then strength surged through him, igniting a fire in his gaze. But there was a time when I realized that kindness is not a luxury. It's a necessity that builds bridges rather than walls. The words unfurled like a flag, waving over the crowd, stirring something deep inside each listener. They leaned in closer, drawn toward his narrative. I met someone who changed everything for me. It was the smallest gesture, really. A smile. He paused, and the crowd seemed to collectively hold their breath. But you see, that simple smile told me I was seen. It showed me I was worth more than the labels people placed on me. Jenna squeezed Sarah's hand tighter, her eyes glistening with emotion. Sarah noticed the young girl, still gripping her mother's hand, her lips curving into a faint smile at the man's recounting. There was a room of hearts beating as one, echoing his journey and the recognition of shared struggles. Suddenly, the officer stepped into the circle of light. He was no longer a looming threat, but a figure who could shape the outcome of this moment. People, he called out, I'm not here to disturb this gathering, but to ensure everyone's safety. The crowd was tense like a wire ready to snap, but his voice softened slightly. I've seen too many communities fracture over fear and misunderstanding. A flicker of understanding passed among the crowd. Perhaps he could be an ally after all. Can we listen to each other? The officer continued, glancing around the circle. Can we have a dialogue rather than a confrontation? And just like that, the air shifted again. It was messy but hopeful, a complex dance of emotions. We're all human, the man beside Sarah said, stepping forward. We're standing here because we want to be better for ourselves and others. This moment isn't just about me. It's about all of us. We're all longing to belong. The crowd murmured in agreement, a swell of voices rising up, filled with shared frustration, hope and determination. Sarah felt an electric connection crackling through the air. Here were real stories, the backbone of who they were, and they were ready to stand together. As each story began to unfold in the air, Sarah noticed the officer nodding, his expression softening. What are we afraid of? She wondered aloud. Aren't we all searching for the same thing? With every word exchanged, they chipped away at the walls that separated them, not just as a crowd but as a community willing to connect, to heal, and to understand. But just when the atmosphere felt thick with hope, a loud request pierced through the air. Hey, what's going on here? Another officer shouted from further down the street, his expression stern. The tension crackled again like a live wire, the unease surging. Would this new voice bring division to what they had just built? Or would it lend itself to further understanding? In that instant everyone turned, eyes darting toward the new figure, hearts racing, uncertain of what the next moment would hold. The new officer strode forward, chest puffed out, eyes scanning the crowd like a hawk. His presence was commanding, sent chills through Sarah and everyone nearby. There's always that one voice that shifts the dynamics, and his was decidedly more adversarial. Step back, everyone. You don't have permission to gather like this. He yelled, the authority in his voice echoing against the walls of the surrounding buildings. It felt like a slap, cutting against the fragile thread of unity they were weaving. Sarah shivered, her heart racing as fear gripped the crowd again. The first officer, still trying to maintain calm, stepped in closer. Please let us talk, he urged, his tone a mix of authority and empathy. They're here to express their feelings. There's no need for hostility. Hostility? The second officer crossed his arms, his frown deepening. You call this a talk? You're letting them break the law, and I'm here to enforce it. Arguments flared. Voices rose around Sarah like a storm brewing. Some stood their ground, determined to fight for their space, while others exchanged nervous glances, uncertainty shadowing their determination. Sarah felt the pressure of the crowd weighing her down, pushing against her chest like a heavy rock. A young man near the front stepped up bravely. We're not breaking the law. We're just trying to connect, to heal. Isn't that what we should be doing? His voice was clear, ringing with authenticity. The crowd murmured in agreement, a rising tide of support swelling around him. But the new officer didn't back down. You think this is just about you? This isn't your playground. People are scared. There are rules. Sarah's heart sank. It felt like a heartbreaking return to the world of division, the one place they were trying to break free from. She felt Jenna squeeze her hand again, her face a mix of hope and fear. Did they have the strength to face yet another barrier? Then, unexpectedly, the first officer raised his hands, palms open. You're right, he said slowly, his eyes darting to the second officer, as if searching for a bridge between them. But maybe we're all scared. Hurting too. The crowd fell quiet. It was an invitation, a kernel of hope amidst the fear. If we can talk, if we can listen, he continued, voice steady, maybe we can find understanding together. But it starts with a choice, doesn't it? Silence reigned for a heartbeat, as if the world was holding its breath. Sarah looked around. Each face held a mixture of vulnerability and unyielding spirit. They were here to bridge divides. Together, they began to breathe in that possibility, even while the men in blue stood watching. That was when the second officer's frown faltered, just a fraction. Sarah could sense something shifting in the air. It was the fervor of a moment, the palpable potential for transformation. With a deep inhale, she stepped out of the crowd, her voice trembling but unwavering. Maybe we should talk then, not just here but everywhere, she declared. If we're searching for connection, it starts with a single conversation, doesn't it? A soft murmur rippled through the crowd like wildfire. The elders nodded, the youth leaned in. It was that moment of collective realization they could create something beautiful out of fear if only they dared to engage. But just as the first officer looked to respond, a sudden crack echoed from behind them. A flash of lights illuminated the street. The tension escalated. Hearts raced yet again. What did this mean? More authorities? More accusations? Sarah's breath caught in her throat as the realization hit her. Conversations can build bridges, but the wall was still standing. Would they step up and fight back with words and actions? The real question remained, would anyone dare to embrace the messy beauty of vulnerability? Or would they crumble under the weight of the unforeseen onslaught? Sarah's heart pounded as the sharp crack echoed through the crowd. The flash of lights blazed brightly, throwing shadows across the tense faces around her. The air thickened with uncertainty. She turned to Jenna, who looked equally alarmed. They both shared a moment of fear and determination, realizing that this was more than just a neighborhood gathering now. It was turning into a moment they would never forget. "Stay close," Sarah whispered, squeezing Jenna's hand as she scanned the crowd for a familiar face. Somewhere in the crowd, the first officer's expression shifted. He recognized the rising anxiety, and it seemed as if he was about to leap into action. The surrounding people shifted, eyes drawn toward the new lights. Some began to pull back, instinctively retreating from what felt like an impending conflict. But others stood firm, emboldened by the charge of the moment. Sarah felt an urgency rising within her. Silence and fear were no longer options. "Everyone, we can't let fear divide us," Sarah called out, her voice rising above the rumble. "This is our chance to show that we care. Right here, right now. Let us not let anything tear us apart." The crowd paused, the mixture of panic and hope reflected on every face. The first officer took a step forward, urging others to regroup, while the new officer stood, too stunned to respond immediately. A determined young woman in front of Sarah countered her words. "What just happened, Sarah? What do we do if it escalates?" "Then we stand together," Sarah urged. "If we're united, they can't break us. We fight with our voices and our hearts, because that's where true strength lies." She felt an electric surge of energy as others began to nod, their defiance sparking like fireworks. The crowd mirrored her urgency, and she saw resistance building among them. It was a shift from fear to empowerment, and she could see the fire igniting in their eyes. "Let us share our stories," she shouted. "We're here for each other. We should be telling our truths so they can hear us, all of us." Someone in the crowd began to speak, sharing their painful experience, and it quickly rippled through the collective. Others began to follow, their voices rising, blending into a chorus of truth. Each story, raw and heartfelt, wove tighter the fabric of their community, stitching together the gaps that fear had tried to create. But the new officer stood resolutely, jaw clenched. "You're making it worse," he barked, but the words barely penetrated the thickening atmosphere of resolve. "Let them speak," the first officer interjected, his voice ringing with authority. No force could stop the powerful stories being shared. They came from every corner of the crowd, pouring out unfiltered pain, but also resilience and hope. As their voices mingled, Sarah felt the strength course through her. Unity and vulnerability was transforming the fear into something remarkably beautiful. Yet amid the swell of connectivity, Sarah noticed a sinister shift when she saw movement at the back. A line of officers moving closer, their intentions unreadable, their stance threatening. Her heart raced again. She took a deep breath, ready to face whatever would come next. Would they continue standing together? Or would the division return? Would they be able to keep their newfound connection alive in the face of looming authority? The question hung in her mind as she stepped back, trying to brace for what was sure to come. There it was, the moment of truth was unfurling rapidly before them. Would fear reign again, or would hope win out? The crowd was about to find out. The tension crackled in the air as the line of officers approached. Their uniforms were stark and sterile against the human vibrancy of the crowd. Sarah glanced at Jenna, whose wide eyes mirrored her own fear. But Sarah also felt an undeniable pull, a deep-seated courage stirring within her. "Keep speaking," she yelled again, her voice a beacon against the swelling anxiety. "Your words matter. They need to hear us." One by one, the crowd found its strength again. More voices rose, some trembling with emotion, others resonating with powerful conviction. A grandmother shared her story of facing racism in her neighborhood, her hands shaking but her words strong. A teenager recounted how the community had rallied around him after a gun incident shattered his life, interpreting the pain into art and activism. As stories flooded from every corner, Sarah felt a warmth spreading through the gathered bodies around her. She noticed some officers on the front line shifting their postures, glancing at one another uncertainly as if the weight of their duty suddenly felt heavy and burdensome. "Listen to us," a voice cried, and another echoed, "We are not your enemy." The chorus intensified, resonating through Sarah's very core. But then they were interrupted. "Enough," The new officer's booming voice punctured the air, and the crowd fell quiet. His face was stern, but anger poured from his eyes. You can't just stand here talking. You're obstructing an official investigation. An investigation? Sarah burst out, crossing the gap between them. Her heart bled with the stories shared. Is that what you call it? You're not here to protect us. You're here to silence us. This isn't just a gathering. We're united. The first officer stepped up, a hand on the shoulder of his colleague. Sir, let us hear them out. We can't create division tonight. This is a community matter. But the newcomer refused to yield. He pointed firmly at the rows of people standing with fingers entwined and hearts pounding. If you don't disperse immediately, we will move you. Fear swept through the crowd like a wave, threatening to unravel the bold tapestry of unity they had begun to weave. Don't back down, Sarah urged, her voice steady despite the rising tension. This is our time. We'll stand together. In that moment, something beautiful happened. The grandmothers and fathers, the teenagers and children, everyone joined hands. The crowd formed a living wall of strength. They didn't retreat. They stood firm, like an entire forest standing tall against the wind. Back up, another officer called, the tension in his voice palpable. But it only seemed to energize the crowd. They're not just words. An old man shouted, his voice shaking but resolute. These stories are our lives. The first officer saw the resolve spreading. It wasn't just an act of defiance. It was a collective heartbeat. People were no longer just speaking. They were standing for one another, wrapping around each other like vines in a garden. Please, the first officer said gently, sensing the shift. There has to be another way. Let us talk. The air was thick with anticipation. Sarah held her breath, feeling both hope and apprehension. Could they find common ground? Would they be able to bridge the divide with dialogue instead of force? Just when Sarah felt the weight of possibility in the air, a loud crash echoed from the side street, a flash of chaos that threatened to derail everything they had built. What had just triggered that discord? Would they still stand together as the storm approached? The moment of reckoning bore down on them like an approaching storm cloud. Sarah's heart raced, and she could only await the next wave of uncertainty. Would their voices remain united against what was coming? The crowd tensed, eyes darting to the source of the commotion. A cacophony of breaking glass and shouting erupting from nearby. Sarah felt dread creep back in, but she refused to let it take root. This was the moment of truth. People around her shifted, but she noticed a glimmer of defiance stirring among them. Their fingers still intertwined, their hearts beating as one. Stay together. Sarah's voice rang out, firm and unwavering. We've made it this far. We can't let fear tear us apart now. A few murmurs of agreement filled the air, their wavering uncertainty mixing with an undercurrent of resolution. Jenna squeezed Sarah's hand, a silent reassurance amidst the chaos. One by one, people began to raise their voices again, rallying behind her call. We're here for each other. Someone shouted, and like a gust of wind beneath their wings, the crowd surged back into a united stance. They were no longer just names or faces, they were a community. Each story shared built a bridge across the divides that had kept them separated, and now they were willing to defend it together. The flash of chaos from the side street felt like a distant rumble, something they could easily overcome together. An air of determination filled the square, thick with expectations that warmed even Sarah's trembling heart. Let us show them what we're all about, she declared, her pulse racing as she glanced around at the swelling crowd, a sea of hopeful faces ready to embrace the strength within them. This is our safe space. We deserve to be heard, and we'll protect our voices together. The sirens had started to fade, sounds of disorder turning into muffled murmurs as people found their resolve. The first officer stood beside Sarah, his expression shifting from uncertainty to understanding. We'll listen, he announced to his colleagues, a powerful statement settling with weight. Let us reach across this divide. With newfound hope, the stories flowed once again, this time flowing even freer, splashing against the walls that had once confined them. The crowd opened their hearts wider, embracing all the varied experiences woven through their community. There were stories of struggle, of heartache, and of resilience, the kind of stories that often remained silent but now echoed vibrantly like a symphony. In the midst of this transformative moment, The second officer watched, his posture softening as the weight of stories enveloped him like a warm embrace. Within moments that felt like eternity, the conversation shifted from opposition to understanding. He began to hear the heartbeat of the community. One by one, people reached out, voicing their truths while the shadows of anger dispersed into the night. Suddenly, the tension broke. It was as if the sun had peeked through a thick cloud. The crowd erupted in shared laughter and spirited applause, energized by the authenticity released into the air. Just when it seemed fear had lost its grip, the newcomers from the side street emerged, curiosity glinting in their eyes, now drawn to the rumbling unity. "I've never seen something like this," one woman exclaimed, her amazed gaze sweeping across the crowd. "What are you all doing?" "Joining together. Sharing our stories," Sarah called, beaming, her heart swelling with warmth. "We're breaking down the barriers to heal, to find understanding." As the light of connection spread, the initial hostility waned, and slowly, hesitant faces transformed. By now, even the second officer had lowered his defenses, stepping closer to the unfolding miracle before him. "We're ready to listen," he said softly, his voice cracking with sincerity. And just like that, amidst stories shared and newfound connections, they realized something crucial: they weren't just individuals fighting for a cause. They were a family, vibrant and complete, woven together by empathy and courage. They were each other's refuge, a healing embrace against a world that sometimes felt dark and uninviting. The air buzzed, charged with renewed energy and possibility. Sarah looked into the faces around her, tears glistening, happy smiles brimming with life. Their fears had granted them a voice, forged in unity. Now, standing together, they knew the work was far from over. Yet hope filled them like the first sweet notes of a spring morning. They would continue, hand in hand, stories unfurling into the night, and as they stayed united, they cultivated their own strength. Turning her gaze to the gathering once more, Sarah wore a radiant smile. "Let's keep this going, let this be just the beginning," she declared, not just for herself, but for everyone ready to embrace change. As laughter and stories mingled under the stars, a feeling wrapped around them all, a promise of a brighter tomorrow, a celebration of connection that echoed in every heart present. The night's magic unfolded with every breath, a testament to the power of resilience, courage, and the healing beauty that blooms in community. Now is the time, dear friends, this is your chance to keep the magic alive. You need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive stories. Don't leave those heartwarming tales behind. Hit that bell, mark all notifications, be part of this journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and help spread these inspiring transformations far and wide. Comment below about your favorite moment from this journey, your feelings and reactions to this beautiful ending. Share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible story. Don't wait not even one more second to share this experience. True fans are those who support the channel and its wonderful tales. This moment matters, and so do you.